Alpharius has methods that are much different than those of his brothers. It's no secret that he was disliked by the other Primarchs, but it wasn't because he couldn't keep up. It was because he was running circles around them. But, in typical Alpha Legion fashion, Alpharius uses this fact not to ingratiate himself with his fellow sons of the Emperor, but to strengthen his hold on his legion and assure their continued loyalty to him going forward, no matter how unorthodox his future orders would appear to be. For of all the weapons the 20th Primarch taught his sons to use, it is the truth itself with which they are most proficient. And Alpharius, the last Primarch, is the deadliest wielder of the truth of all. In this video, we'll look at the events of the Tesstra Compliance, when the War Master Horus dispatched Guilliman and his Ultramarines alongside the newly discovered Alpha Legion and its Primarch Alpharius, from the short story Council of Truth by Mike Brooks. Basically, this story is told through two lenses. There are some boots-on-the-ground viewpoints during the Compliance itself, but most of the story is told in hindsight, as a council of Space Marines sit in a semicircle asking questions of their Primarch. This is a ritual they partake in to keep everyone on the same page and on the up and up, so to speak. The Council of Truth, where anything may be asked and all answers are to be given with as little personal bias as possible in order for the Legion to parse truth from fact. And if you don't know the difference between truth and fact, then please watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. After you finish this video, of course. Dr. Jones explains it rather well. So some really unorthodox decisions were made by the Alpha Legion's Primarch during the battles that forced the Tesstra Compliance, which was when the Imperium's Space Marines came upon a conglomerate of planets and systems that had about 11 billion people and had survived since the Age of Strife as their own culture. They had no intention of joining the Imperium, so Horus sent the Ultramarines and the Alpha Legion to bring them to heel. And it was one of those situations where Horus was unaware that the Alpha Legion were S++ tier Foxhound on the Boss Extreme. He thought they were noobs and needed the Ultramarines to show them what to do. And Rabute assumed the same thing as well. And this caused a huge problem for Guilliman. He was bragging that he could take the worlds within a few months, but as we see at the Council of Truth, Alpharius accomplished it within weeks, with minimal loss of life, total surprise, and against the express orders of Guilliman, who had forgotten that Alpharius was his brother, his equal, and not merely just some Astartes to be ordered about. So the council was set up like this. Alpharius on a chair, in a plain chamber, with several benches organized in a semicircle facing him. There were 3 legionnaires before the Primarch, who was helmeted, each one in extremely unadorned and plain power armor, and the Primarch wore the Pythian scales. They asked Alpharius why he didn't work alongside Guilliman, and he had some interesting things to say. My point is that it is easy for Rabute to proclaim himself a mighty general when his troops obey his orders quickly, without question, and are singularly capable in all aspects of open warfare. He thinks that off the back of this fact, he can forge a legacy that will endure, that he can set down a method which any commander can follow and achieve the same results as he has. But he has not been tested against a superior adversary. The Primarch sighs as if regretful. One day, Rabute may face an enemy that will not engage him in the manner of warfare that he knows. His Ultramarines, the pale imitations of him that they are, may find themselves without his guidance, or find that what guidance he has left them is insufficient for the task. What will they do then, when the dogma they clasp so close to their hearts has failed them? When the commands do not come, or perhaps more worryingly, their commander cannot be trusted? Will their spirit break? Perhaps, and perhaps not. But will they adapt? Of that, I am more doubtful. They will need to learn new warfare from first principles, and while they attempt that, they will be cut to ribbons. So, we see Alpharius doesn't think much of Guilliman's methods. He uses this situation to train his men, as he constantly does, in new ways of fighting. And the Testra are people who are very, very capable. They have very good commanders who are intense and single-minded in their duty to protect their people. They're led by a general who is awoken by an alarm, battle stims immediately pumped into her system, and slips immediately into a pressed uniform. Her reasoning is that her face is recognizable, but her uniform is even more so. Thus, if someone hesitates a microsecond after she gives an order because their mind lags as they put together the woman screaming at them is the general, it might be detrimental to the battle. So she was always ready to go with her uniform, even during a red alert, get out of bed now, the world is ending situation, like they ended up in. I felt bad for the Testra. They were human and just wanted to live their own way, although they were a strict caste system. Whatever role you were born into, that was your role for life. There was no promotion, no demotion, only stagnation. And they were too reliant upon the grunts of their rank-and-file soldiers, who weren't too smart, as they were Ogrins. Capable as all hell when set to extremely simple tasks, but they could only hold one thought at a time. Hold the line. Sure, they could do that. Kill all the enemies. They could do that too. But clear this building, then move on to the next and clear it too, consolidate and rendezvous here. Nope, that's way more than their pea-brains could handle. So the point of these councils of truth was so that the Legion could have a clear idea of events as they occurred. And more importantly, the intentions of leadership. The anonymity of the legionnaires that met with the Primarch was to assure that no biases were taken into account, that the Primarch was accountable to every person in his legion the same. And that was a big deal. And this was even often extended to the humans who worked for the Legion. Not many other legions show that level of respect to the base humans who serve them, loyal or traitor. Guilliman chewed his way through several of the Tesstra worlds before Alpharius even got started. And when he did, it was almost just a tease. He flew past their defenses with his entire fleet and went straight for the jugular, to the capital city of their capital world, metropolis of many millions called Prime. And he laid siege to the city. They bolstered their defenses, they drilled, they reinforced everything, and prepared diligently. The Testra were ready for the attack and the Alpha Legion just waited, probing here and there, launching little raids, but then they pulled off their own classic shenanigans and they destroyed the Testra in some horrendous ways. First, they had infiltrated their command and had psycho-conditioned a colonel to pull out his pistol and waste the other members of high command before putting it to his own head and doing himself in. And the moment he did that, stopping their command from functioning entirely, the Alpha Legion opened up. 1,000 attacks at once, each one deadly, decisive, immediate, and unexpected. Agents of the Legion had already infiltrated deep. The saddest part was the Ogrins in the end, with nobody to tell them what to do, and the last order they received being to follow the command units. They got cut down like wheat. Sikaran tanks wasted them as they stood there, unable to respond as they hadn't been ordered to fight back. It was that sad and pathetic. In the end, 60 million people died, and Testra fell into Imperial compliance. Guns fell silent on many worlds, and the Ultramarines' slow, grinding wars of attrition came to a quick and decisive halt. So the other legionnaires questioning Alpharius during the council are asking why they didn't just immediately go in and destroy the city of Prime since it was within the Legion's power. Why play the game and take weeks of setting the stage for some great event? Why all the theatrics and subterfuge? Alpharius says he was asked the same thing by Guilliman, and he told him that it would have been too easy. Alpharius is the kid who got bullied and underestimated by his brothers, but they're projecting as he's actually and obviously much more capable than most of them, even at their own specialties. Just an observation, and why he's the greatest Primarch. The Legion used this entire Testra situation to train, to learn new ways of adapting and overcoming adverse situations. Alpharius prides himself on being a general who can adapt, be flexible, and take the fight to any enemy, even stronger and more capable forces, because he's smarter and unpredictable. He thinks Guilliman sees the art of warfare as something that can be codified, that his way is the best and only way, but it isn't. And that That will be Guilliman's undoing one day, that he will always assume he's the greater military mind and genius and nobody can best him. But Alpharius finds that thinking ironic, as Guilliman's blind spot is so obvious to his own astute observations. But that's often the problem with Primarchs. Their major blind spot is themselves, and when it comes to self-awareness, they are often extremely lacking. I'd say that it is doubly ironic then that this also applies to the Hydra as well. But he lets his legion, through the Council of Truth, know that sure, they could have owned the Tesstra capital within hours, but did it slowly, in weeks, with minimal loss of Legion personnel and materials, all to make a point. To learn, to train, to try out new, extreme, and flexible tactics. Because Alpharius wanted his Legion to be able to function without him, if need be. To operate on its own, not dependent on the chain of command, and yet still capable of getting the job done. And this empowers the legionnaires. They feel like they're treated as equals. They feel like they got the truth of events and intentions behind them, and that their Primarch was being transparent with them. And on the surface, it does seem so. Alpharius is regretful at the right moments, and he's also arrogant at the right moments, and sure pleased with his own genius. He gets personal and strips away all pretense between himself and his legion. He's not the son of the Emperor in that moment, not their gene father. He's just one of the homies, and he's being real. And the icing on the cake is that they use this all to gloat about how the Ultramarines are clueless and won't be able to keep up in the future as they are inflexible. Alpharius reminds them that the Alpha Legion is the last line of defense for mankind. It must endure, even if the Raven Guard, the Iron Warriors, and any other legions fade away or are destroyed. The Alpha Legion must make contingency plans to make sure the Legion endures. They must outsmart everyone. They must outplay everyone, must win every game because they've rigged it ahead of time. Alpharius is by far the most ambitious Primarch, the most arrogant, and possibly even the most narcissistic, other than Fulgrim. He thinks a lot of his own genius and holds himself in the highest regard. But he knows that it isn't how he perceives himself that matters, but how his father sees him. As he notes, the Primarchs are tools, and twice before, the tools of the Emperor were found to be wanting, found ineffective, broken, or otherwise in need of discarding. What a blunt, non-poetic way to describe the loss of the Primarchs of the 2nd and the 11th Legions. And from such an otherwise imaginative mind. I think it speaks to how little he really wants to think about that. All the Primarchs seem to have a serious problem with thinking about the Forgotten and the Purged. Alpharius is no different. I mean, he was even there when Malcador choked Horus out, along with the Khan. So Alpharius, not wanting to fade into obsolescence, or be seen as lesser than any of his brothers, resorts to extreme measures to assure that he and his legion are not erased. That's where this all comes from. Now, we can't take anything he says in Head of the Hydra as fact, even if they may be full of truths. So, we can't operate on the assumption that the 20th Primarch was indeed the first found and raised on Terra in secret by the Emperor. That story might not be true at all. So we have to look at the Legion the way the rest of the Space Marines would. They're the newcomer, the last found Primarch, the last Legion deployed to prosecute the Emperor's Great Crusade, and spread the Imperial truth throughout the stars. They haven't chalked up all those wins that the other legions have. They've been officially, at least, unleashed for the least amount of time of any legion. Though they have a massive fleet and their own Gloriana-class battleship, the Alpha, they're unknown. But that's really just to the other legions. Alpharius knows they were conducting false flag operations for a long time, operating as the Ghost Legion before he met with the War Master Horus and was introduced to the galaxy officially. And he knows that will mean something to his father, the Master of Mankind, whether his brothers know of it or not. Alpharius is the spook of spooks. He's a spy to the core, through and through. So he's not going to open his mouth about it to his brothers, even if the events of the Head of the Hydra are true. Even if he's truly the first found, the actual Alpha, not just ironically named that in mockery. So the Council of Truth disbands, satisfied with the new insights they gleaned from questioning the Primarch. They get up and leave, each in turn, to return to their normal duties and don their normal armor that denotes rank and who they are and whatnot. But the last one lingers in the chamber and has a few more questions for the Primarch. Alpharius removes his crested helm, and it's actually Omegon under the helmet. Not that anyone but one of them could tell the difference. They're identical in every way. But then the Legionnaire removes his helmet too, and it is the identical face. Literally Omegon pretending to be Alpharius, explaining Alpharius' actions to an anonymous Legionnaire, one of which turned out to be Alpharius. Totally Alpha Legion and totally awesome. Pretty fun twist too, I thought. But Alpharius wants to know if Omegon was telling the truth, and Omegon says that he did, or at least as much truth as was necessary. It was pretty sick actually, and well played. As much as necessary. But we can see the brothers playing coy and dancing around the fact that they've chosen opposite sides in the grand scheme of things, acknowledging it and avoiding it in the same breath. It's a pretty badass dynamic between them, actually. To the Alpha Legion, the truth is a weapon to be wielded, just as is the lie. Control of the Legion and maintaining their loyalty is done through manipulating perception as much as anything else, and controlling how information is received and incorporated into the Legion's agenda. Alpharius knows Omegon is working against him, as seen in the Seventh Serpent. But that remains unacknowledged and something they dance around. That's just politics, essentially. They're still twins and share similar tastes in most things. So it's fun to see them working together to manipulate the Legion in its perspective of the Primarchs, even if ultimately they are at odds behind the scenes. Another awesome Alpha Legion story, some of the best Warhammer lore out there, tying directly into the old Horus Heresy Black Books and Alpharius Head of the Hydra. I highly recommend reading Council of Truth. It's mostly intrigue at court kind of stuff, but there's plenty of action too. If you're a self-identifying son of the Hydra like I am, then this one is a must-read.